Okay, so we are up to page 87, which is Ha'ikar Hashlishi, the third principle. And we continue this one describing Hashem, just like the first two, sort of continuing from the first two. The first one we describe Hashem as being the creator and continuous, ongoing creator of the world. The second one is about how Hashem is unique and his oneness, he's a Yochid, individual and oneness. And the third one is that Hashem
page 87.
No physical representation at all. Okay, so ani ma'amin ve'emunah shalema. I'm steadfast in my absolute belief. Shabori yisbarach shemo eino guf, that the Creator, blessed be He, has no corporeality. There's a good word, right? No physical representation, no guf, no body. Velo yasigeu masigeh guf, nor can any material qualities be ascribed to him. Ve'ein lo shum dimyon klal, there is nothing at all that is comparable to him. Now, obviously, the difficulty that this gives us is that living in the physical world, it makes it very hard for us to understand the Creator. Because if the Creator is not physical at all and has no comparison in the physical world at all, then it's going to be very difficult for us to actually understand anything about him, as it were, about the Creator of the world, right? So we're going to see that there are times when we actually do use physical terms, and that's why this one is a particular tricky one, where we've got to be careful, even if we do use physical terms to describe Hashem, because we have no other language, but we have to make sure that we realize that is not an actual description. Okay, so let's begin. Page 91, Eino Guf, Hashem defies description. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, has neither a body nor any shape or size. In fact, we cannot possibly describe him because he is entirely different from anything in our universe. He's absolutely infinite. We are absolutely finite. There is nothing we can compare him to because we have nothing with any true resemblance to him. It's not just difficult to picture him, it's impossible. Right? Again, this is sort of, on the edge of human understanding because we're trying to understand something that it's impossible to understand. The ultimate understanding of Hashem is attained by reaching an awareness that He is truly incomprehensible, right? Really the highest level we can get to, because often we still have these like childish pictures of God being like a bearded old man, let's be honest, or of a voice, kind of coming down from a, some sort of fatherly, maybe motherly figure, that's up in heaven, right? Because that's the way our mind works. We can't imagine something which is beyond our frame of reference entirely. So it's almost like something which you have to work on not knowing, if you like, being able to get to a level where you understand that you can't understand what God is in essence, okay? So let's have a look. On what basis can we say with certainty that Hashem has no physical attributes or properties, right? Meaning, what is this based on? What is the logic behind this principle that there is no physical properties at all that we can assign to Hashem? We've already established that Hashem is Ein Sof, which means truly infinite. In contrast, all physical matter is by nature limited. A chair is a chair because it conforms to a certain basic shape. It has an end point beyond which it does not extend. A beam of light has certain parameters that it does not exceed. For instance, a single ray of light doesn't immediately light up the entire world, right? The ray of light will only light up that which is in its path. Everything in our universe has limitations. Hashem has no limitations whatsoever. As such, describing him as possessing the limited features of humans is not just a matter of comparing apples to oranges, it's a matter of comparing two systems that differ so fundamentally that they share no point of comparison whatsoever. So, essentially, the reason why we know that Hashem can't be described in physical terms is because he is infinite. In fact, by the way, the Kabbalistic Sepharim, the Kabbalistic works, that is what they call God. The name that they refer to God is Ein Sof, as the infinite one, the infinite being. And therefore, because we live in a world, the physical world is by definition, everything is finite, everything has its place. Everything has its dimensions. This is where it begins and this is where it ends. So therefore, for us to describe and understand something which is infinite is really impossible. So what we can do, though, is understand at least what it is that we can't understand. And that's what he goes on to do. He gives a good mashal, a good parable, analogy to help us to understand sort of why God is outside of our system. Attempting to comprehend, let's continue, second paragraph, page 92. Attempting to comprehend the nature of something infinite is not for the faint of heart, but perhaps the concept of his lacking any physical form can be expressed in more relatable terms. Let me ask you a question. Is Hashem strong? Of course, you'll reply, yes, with utmost confidence. Likely, you'll regard the question with credulity. Strong? Why, of course, he's stronger than all of us combined, right? Hashem is the ultimate strength. Yet maybe it's not that simple. Maybe he really isn't stronger than you or I. The Rambam declares unequivocally, clearly, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has absolutely no physical dimensions or properties. Since physical strength falls into those categories, we'd have to conclude that he does not, in fact, possess any physical strength. How can that be? So this here is the quandary that we have, which is sort of almost contradictory, because on the one hand, of course, Hashem's strong, because he's stronger than anything in the entire world. But on the other hand, strength is a physical quality. So how do we understand this? In the first chapter, he continues, we used an analogy comparing Hashem's creation of the world to a computer programmer's creating an imaginary world in a computer game. Let's return for a moment to that analogy. The programmer sits down and begins creating his virtual city, filling it with all sorts of interesting characters. Character 1 in the game is a standard person, not particularly powerful. Character 2 is a big tough guy. And character 3 has superpower strength and can destroy his surroundings with his bare hands. Okay, you've got these three characters that are created. Each one is stronger than the other. We onlookers can compare the three, noting which one is stronger than the others. It would be ridiculous, however, to compare the strength of any of these characters to the strength of the person who wrote the computer program. The programmer can eliminate all these characters with ease, but not because he's stronger head to head. It's because he's the one who created the whole metric of strength in the first place. As far as he's concerned, the strength of the respective characters is utterly meaningless and represents nothing more than a line of code or a manifestation of his whim. Meaning they're talking about completely different terms. The programmer doesn't compete on the level of strength with the characters that he created. It's obvious. And although he can overcome them, as it were, he's not overcoming them at their level, really. It's a completely different metric that he's using. He's the programmer, and he can, if you like, erase them from the game. Whether he's stronger than them or not is absolutely irrelevant. It's quite a clever analogy to try and understand sort of the way that Hashem is just in a different dimension from all of us. So he continues on page 93. Hashem cannot be described as stronger than you or I. He is the one who created strength. It's completely wrong to attribute strength to him in any comparative terms, and that's the problem. Whenever we use physical language, it's always comparative. So someone is cleverer, someone is stronger, someone is, larger. All of these things are comparative to the physical world, and that says, like, it's a level playing field, and God's like a lot bigger than us. God's a lot cleverer than us. He's like the same, but he's just much cleverer. He's much wiser than us. That's not true. That's not true at all. Put otherwise, he says, the ability of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, to defeat enemies who possessed clear military superiority against overwhelming odds, stemmed not from Hashem being stronger than any army. Rather, an army's entire ability to function rests upon his discretion. His abilities are not just superior by comparison, but in absolute terms, as he is the controlling force without which nothing would exist. As far as he's concerned, whether water flows downstream or upstream makes no inherent difference, right? All of the laws of nature, they don't apply to Hashem. They don't limit him in any way. What emerges then is that aside from the information given to us via the Torah, we have no way of describing the essence of Hashem, which is an interesting thing. The information given to us by the Torah is what Hashem told us about himself. That we know. And we know from the Torah that God created the world. And we know that he interacted with us and that he spoke to us at Mount Sinai. And we know the way he's interacted with the prophets and with Moshe Rabbeinu and with the Jewish people from what is written in the Torah. And that Hashem himself revealed to us. That's the only thing we can really know with any true surety about Hashem. All that we do know about him can be summed up by stating that there is some entity that created our entire system and therefore is not part of our system. It's not bound by any rules of our system, nor does it possess any of the characteristics of creatures found in the system. It is simply above and beyond the whole system. Okay? Meaning we've clearly established with a very clear analogy that Hashem can't be compared to anything. Hashem is infinite. Hashem is the programmer. We have no frame of reference, and any terms that we do use are going to be only comparative in order to describe him. That's very, very clear. We can understand that. Now, he continues in the bold part on page 93. This brings us to the thorny question posed above by the Rambam. We are told in no uncertain terms that Hashem has no physical properties. He's no body, nor any bodily features. He doesn't perform human behaviors. He doesn't sit, stand, walk, or talk. For that matter, he experiences no emotions. He doesn't even become angry or distressed or overjoyed, right? All of those things are human emotions. Yet, the Torah is full of references to Hashem. We find repeated mention of his hand, arm, and body. It says with the splitting of the sea that Hashem stretched out his hand. It says with the 10 plagues that God's strong hand was evident. What does that mean? How can we understand this? If we believe that Hashem possesses any level of corporeality, physicality, it's a violation of this basic principle of our faith. So why would the Torah describe Hashem in such terms? I mean, this is the quandary. We are trying in the Torah, it's trying to describe what is indescribable. And the way that it does that is by using physical terms, God's strong hand, God getting angry, God loving, God being happy, etc., etc. Yet all of these things we just said go against this principle. These are the things we're not supposed to be doing about Hashem, right? We're not supposed to be describing Hashem in this way because he's not physical. He's outside of the system. He's the programmer. So how do we understand this? He continues, the Rambam explains that these are merely borrowed terms, not true descriptions. This, he says, is in line with Chazal, our sage's principle, continuing on top of page 94, that Dibra Torah Kaloshim B'nei Adam, the Torah speaks in terminology that is familiar to mankind. In other words, these descriptions of Hashem are fundamentally inaccurate. What does this mean? What value is there in speaking in our language if these terms could easily be misconstrued? Furthermore, if the descriptions are merely borrowed human terms, what are they meant to convey? So he answers, if I want to describe something that's unfamiliar to you, of necessity, I must resort to comparing that item to something in your realm of experience. By portraying the new item in relatively comparable items, I can convey a basic understanding of what it is. If I'm describing a piece of furniture, I can say it's as long as this or as tall as that. Even terms such as strong, sturdy, or heavy have meaning only because the person is familiar with these concepts in other settings. If, however, I describe to you something for which you have no frame of reference, my descriptions will be utterly useless. The classic example of this is trying to describe color to a person who's been blind from birth. What words would I use? What meaning do the words blue, black, or white have to him? These words belong to a realm to which this person has no connection and therefore no point of comparison. Consequently, he has no way to process these terms, right? Which means really we've got this impossibility of describing Hashem because we don't have the terms that are able to describe Hashem. And as he says, with someone who's got a completely different frame of reference, and the descriptions that you give are never going to really make sense. You know, when we were away just now, we were lighting candles in the hotel that we were staying at over Shabbos. And it was really interesting because the staff, who were lovely, very, very accommodating, you know, by the 8th night of Hanukkah and 4 menorahs, and we had 32 candles. We'd asked them permission, but I don't know if they realized how many candles we meant, you know. So there are 32 candles sort of lined up at our menorahs, and they're, you know, on view, kind of, we were eating in a room off the lobby, and there's a window, and they can all see them and everything. And some of the staff asked if they could come in. They said, oh, you know, it's Hanukkah, right? They said, it's Hanukkah. They said, yes, you know, and they said, can we come and watch? So I said, yeah, sure, no problem. Anyway, so they stood there, my kids laughed because I got into, as they said, I got into rabbi mode again and started explaining, what's going on and what happened and the Greeks and the Hashmonaim and the Maccabees and everything. And I said to them, I apologize, the rest is in Hebrew. We then launched into the brachas and Maritzah, and I don't know what they understood of it, but they loved it. They loved the experience, and they were, their eyes were wide open to see the kids singing this song in Hebrew. They'd never seen anything like that. Yeah, sure. From the little one, from Yono, 6 years old, and everything. They thought it was the most amazing thing. And they said to me afterwards, they said that I said, where did you know about Hanukkah from? Just out of interest, because they'd heard of it before. And they said, we all learned about it in school. Like that was the one Jewish festival we learned about in primary school. This is probably somewhere in Somerset, Taunton, I think, And this is the one Jewish festival we learned about in primary school. And they had a basic understanding of the story. And I suddenly realized the reason why, most likely, it was the festival they learned about is because it's the same time as their festival. So it's around winter time, and they're celebrating Xmas. And they say, and the Jews do this, we have, the tree and thing, and they have the candles, and they have their story, and we have our story, and it's for them. That's how they understand it. It's the Jews' Xmas, the nice candles and everything, yeah. So really, it's nothing to do with that. It's not the Jewish Xmas at all, and it's not connected to theirs. It just happens to be that it's the same time of the year, that we came first, etc., right? So therefore, it's a different frame of reference. So as far as they're concerned, they've understood it in whatever terms. As far as I'm concerned, they didn't really begin to sort of scratch the surface of what Hanukkah is all about, but they needed to have something. And it's more understandable. Hanukkah is more understandable than a Shavuos is for them, because the Matan Torah idea, right, doesn't exist. And I don't know whether they know the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Jews coming out of Egypt in Pesach. Certainly Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur is not going to be on their radar at all. So they have a frame of reference. So similarly, what we're forced to do is the Torah has to use physical terms because that's the only frame of reference that we have as physical people. But, and this is the important but that the Rambam emphasizes, that doesn't mean that those are real accurate descriptions. It doesn't mean that God really has any of those physical qualities, like the outstretched arm, the strong hand, doesn't mean he's got any of those physical qualities that we have assigned to him. So therefore, maybe the week ahead, we're halfway through this principle, and maybe the week ahead, what we can sort of keep in mind, and to bring this a little bit down to earth, right, is that we can think to ourselves of the biggest force in the world. It could be the American army. It could be, I don't know, the mortgage crisis. It could be whatever, there's big things going on in the world, geopolitical weather, I don't know if those two terms go together, whatever it is, the climate, whatever it is, those big things, right? And then we think to ourselves, okay, Hashem is Ein Sof. However big those things are, however out of my control those are, Hashem is much, much bigger than that. Hashem is so big that we can't even describe him in terms of being big. Hashem is absolutely infinite. And try maybe to comprehend what that means in terms of our issues, our problems, however big they may be for the world, however big they may be over here. Let's just try and sort of put them in perspective with realizing that Hashem is the programmer. Hashem is the Ein Sof. Hashem is the infinite one, which is beyond everything, even the largest, most thorny problem that could exist in our little world. Thank you very much. We're going to stop there.